3.
Hello, are you ready to make a super delicious pea soup? Because I am. I'm going to tell you what the ingredients are. Right now, I have, the recipe calls for 2 to 3 tablespoons of sunflower oil. You could always use olive oil as well. I'm just going to tell you right now, I never measure my sunflower. I never measure the oil that goes in the bottom of the pot. All I do is put enough oil to really cover the bottom of the pot. I don't need like a big puddle of oil, but you want to make sure it completely covers the bottom. Then we have a cup of onions, half a cup of celery, half a cup of carrot, about a cup and a quarter of split peas, a cup of frozen peas, fresh ground pepper, salt, 4 cloves of garlic, minced. I also have some fresh mint I'm going to add at the very end for a garnish. And I have, this is called a ham steak. If you are not vegetarian and you'd like to make a split pea soup with what's called a ham hock, you're going to go into the meat section of your supermarket, and it looks like, it actually is about the size of a turkey drumstick, and it's called a ham hock. You can get it regular or you can have it smoked. And if you use that, you actually just sink it right into your soup. And it's like you're making a soup stock at the same time as you're making your soup, because all of the delicious flavors are being drawn out of that ham bone and infusing in your soup. Now, if you do not want ham or you don't have a ham hock, you can just slice up ham and add it at the end. But I'm going to tell you, this soup is delicious. You don't need ham to make it a delicious, really hearty soup. What is amazing about split peas, now a split pea is called a pulse. So this is, or sometimes they're called legumes. And so this is, it's from a plant, but it's loaded with protein and it's loaded with fiber. So it's super, super healthy. It's also really, really inexpensive. For a 1 pound bag of split peas in the supermarket, it's typically about $2, maybe $3. And you could with that, you could make 4 or 5 servings of pea soup. It's a really, really great meal, loaded with flavor, really delicious, super easy. So we're gonna start our soup with our mirepoix. So the first thing that always goes into your pot is your onions. So number 1, I'm gonna turn on my cooktop. It's gonna super help if I plug it in. That always makes a big difference. And I'm gonna turn my heat on low. So my cooktop range is 1 to 10. And so I'm gonna set it at number 2. So not the lowest temperature, but just a little bit warmer than that. My oil's in the bottom of the pan. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add in my chopped onions. The second step is always the same step. When you start with onions, you're gonna add a sprinkle of salt. You need to do this. So what salt does is it pulls the water out of the onions, and that creates this beautiful base on the bottom of the pot. And that water protects your onions. It gives, you've got the hot pot, then you've got your oil, you've got a little bit of water, then your onions sit on top of that. And so what it does is it means that the onions aren't sitting right on the heat. They have like a little jacket so they don't get burned. So we're gonna let those cook up for a few minutes, and we're waiting for always your onions to be what's called translucent. So if you look really closely in here to how those onions look, you can see they're white. I just chopped them, they're in there. So we're looking for them to be closer to see-through. Once they're see-through, we're gonna add our carrots and our celery, and then we're gonna be on our way. Okay, these are our delicious onions, and they've been sauteing for about 10 minutes. So now we're gonna add our garlic. We're gonna cook that for about a minute or 2. Gonna get that garlic really mixed in. Most important thing with the garlic, you want it really well incorporated. Garlic, unlike onions, garlic, once it gets burnt, it's really bitter and you can't get that flavor away. So really make sure when you're adding the garlic, the temperature is low. Okay, you got to have it low. We're going to let that cook for a minute, and then we're going to add our celery and carrots, and we're going to cook the celery and carrots for another 10 minutes. And you'll see what's next. Okay. Oh, that garlic is beautiful. It's simmering along. Now we're going to add to that our carrots and our celery. We're going to give that a good stir, and that is also going to cook for about 10 minutes. Then we're going to add our peas and our stock. Yum! Okay, here is our delicious mirepoix. It smells fantastic. I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of pepper on it because I know I want fresh ground pepper. And that might not be a little bit to you, but it is to me. I'm going to add in all of my split peas. And I'm going to give them a really, really good stir. I want them really coated. I want them really mixed in with the carrots and the celery and the onions and the garlic. Okay? So that's all mixed in. And now I'm going to add my stock. You want to have at least 2 inches above your peas. So I'm going to pour it all in. There we go. So that's 4 cups. That's a liter of stock. And now the last thing I'm going to do before I leave it, because it's going to need to cook for about an hour, 50 minutes. Okay? I'm going to turn it up. So I'm going to turn it up to 6. So it's 6 out of 10. So it's not straight medium. It's just a little bit above medium. Like maybe not quite medium high. And I'm going to let that go. And I'm mostly going to ignore it. I'm going to check in every 15 or 20 minutes and just see what it looks like. The only thing you're testing for in terms of doneness is you want to make sure that those peas are completely cooked through. If you bite it and your mouth feels kind of dry or it's crunching or you feel like you've broken a tooth, it is not ready, okay? It needs about an hour. If you don't like that, if you're like, oh, I want it to cook more quickly, you could consider taking those same peas and soaking them overnight in water. So you'd cover them completely with water. Again, at least 2 inches above it. It doesn't have to be, it could be in a plastic container, it could be in a metal bowl, it could be in a glass bowl, but it needs to soak overnight. If you forget about your peas, if you put them in the fridge overnight and you're planning on making them the next day, and then you get distracted and you're like, well, maybe I'll try the next day or the next day, those peas are going to be funky and gross and you're going to have to dump them. You'll know right away because if you take the lid off your bowl, they're going to smell weird, okay? So you soak them overnight, but you don't soak them for days and days and days, okay? Overnight, that's it. So let's check back in about 20 minutes and see what is going on with this delicious soup. Pea soup, yummy. Okay, here is our pea soup and it is just boiling away. So it's at 6 out of 10, like I said, just above medium. I'm going to turn it down to 4 now. I brought it to a boil and I just want it to slowly cook. If it boils too quickly, what's going to happen is the liquid from the stock, the water in the stock is going to boil off, and then what could happen, the worst case scenario, if I ignore it, it can burn. It'll just stick on the bottom and the pea will just become a horrible sludge, and then you're really going to have to investigate in what the best sponges are to get that off the bottom of your pot. So we're going to turn it down, we're going to cook it slowly, and we know we have about another 45 minutes before we can eat our delicious soup, okay? Okay, here is our delicious pea soup. I'm going to blend this pea soup with just a hand blender. You could also use a regular blender if you wanted. Hand blender is just easier to control how smooth you want your soup. Now, this is a little thicker than I would like it. So I'm going to thin it, in this case, just with water. Of course you could use stock. Of course you could. There's no reason not to. Before you start to puree it, you want to definitely take one of the peas out and taste it. Number one, you want to test to make sure it's done. It shouldn't have any teeth to it. It shouldn't like hurt you to eat it. Ready, smooth. Doing that also is going to inform you whether you want to add more pepper, more salt, or anything else. So the first thing I'm going to do, I am going to add some chopped mint to my pea soup just because I really like it. I'm just going to show you the easiest way to tackle a leaf. If you want to have some really nice little bursts of mint in your pea soup, you're going to make like a little bed of your leaves. I gave them a rinse. Always rinse them. Assume that everything is filthy, that people have been packing it with disgusting, filthy fingers. Okay? I'm going to cigar roll my leaves, and this cut is called a chiffonade. So I'm going to just take my little paring knife and just run that through, and we've got these nice, beautiful little pieces of mint that are going to be really nicely dispersed. Okay? There's my mint. I'm going to add that at the end. Got my peas here. I'm going to add those in. I'm going to add a little bit of water. I know I need a little bit, and then I'm going to just puree it. Now, the peas are cold. They were frozen, and now they're defrosted. So if you want to heat that up, you can just return that to your cooktop or your stove, and you can just heat it up for like a few minutes on medium-low. I'm just going to puree this. How much you puree it is just how you like it. If you want a super thick pea soup, then just puree it with a teeny bit of liquid, or none if you don't need it. If you like a thinner soup, then just add a little bit more. I'm going to puree that. The easiest way to get your hand mixer to go to work is just put it on a slight angle, just enough so stuff can get underneath it, and you're going to create like a little whirlpool. I'm going to break that down. I'm going to add a little bit more liquid in. Now for my soup today, there we go. For my soup today, I'm going to keep it vegetarian, but if I wanted to, I could just take this ham and I'm just going to slice it into little cubes, and I can toss that in. But I'm going to toss it in after I puree it, because otherwise it's just going to be like ground ham pieces, which doesn't appeal to me. So see, if I just dip it on a bit of an angle, it creates a bit of a whirlpool. There you go. Let's get that in a bowl. Top a little mint on top. And there you have a hearty, delicious soup. It is loaded with protein, loaded with fiber, super easy, super economical. Ta-da! Delicious pea soup. Enjoy.